How's it going, everyone? So what we're going to be talking about today is the UFC Fight Night Dillashaw versus Cruz card that just happened. And let's just say this was one hell of a card. Now, as always, before I get into that, I'm going to give a shout out to my sponsors. Okay. Once again, I still don't have any sponsors, but I'm going to keep it going. And instead, I'm going to give a shout out to McDonald's. Because McDonald's is open late, their food is good for the price. It works out very well when you need it. And as always, I'm always in it for a good deal. But here we go, moving on. Dillashaw versus Cruz. Now, I'm going to start with the main event because, let's face it, that's what this card was all about. Returning champion Dominick Cruz facing off current champion TJ Dillashaw. Cruz ended up winning a split decision, and let's just say, I think he won. All right, I'm going to come out, I'm going to say it. I definitely think he won. Some people are talking that Dillashaw might have won because he could definitely give him 4 and 5. And those rounds were pretty much, uncontested. You can't really argue against Dillashaw winning the last 2 rounds. It was the first 3 rounds that a lot of people had some issues with. I think Cruz definitely won 1, 2, and 3. I can understand some arguments being made that Dillashaw might have stolen one here or there. From everything he said after the fight, he definitely feels he won. But, I get that. I do. He's a fighter deep, like through and through, deep down. He's a fighter. He definitely has confidence in himself. I'm not thinking there's any sort of immediate rematch for him coming his way. I think what we're going to see next from Cruz is him fighting against Faber, just because of the whole beef thing. Faber waiting in the wings for the winner of this fight. So I definitely see Cruz's first title fight coming against Faber. As for Dillashaw, I don't know. I think if Sterling's contract issues get resolved, I think that would be a great fight for him, a number 1 contender. If he beats him, he's definitely back in the mix. The guy has proven that he's probably the biggest threat to Cruz. Cruz has done well throughout his career against other competition, but I think Dillashaw was the first one who really kind of pushed the pace against him, who really made him fight. You could look at the Faber loss, but that was so far way back in the WEC days that I don't even think you could say it's the same fighter, the same Dominick Cruz. Another aspect of this fight to take into account is that Cruz did mention that his foot was basically hanging on by a thread. So he did come into this with some injuries, but he proved his mental toughness as always. He came back from all his injuries, and he proved his championship medal, right? I picked Dillashaw to win this fight. I thought there was too many question marks around Cruz. I think if Dillashaw had pushed the pace a little bit more, I know he was the aggressor all throughout the fight, so that's not exactly the best thing to say because he was pushing the pace. But I think if he didn't kind of become complacent in rounds 2 and 3, just standing in front of Cruz and letting Cruz, move away, dictate the pace, not really cutting him off all that much inside the octagon, I think Dillashaw could have. I definitely think Dillashaw could have easily won this fight, but in my opinion, Cruz did win. I think that the decision for him was justified, and it was a great fight. I was very happy to see it go down. I was intrigued by the whole thing from rounds 1 to 5. It had my attention. It was a great fight, great win for Cruz. I'm very happy to see him come back. I don't even think there's a bigger comeback story in the history of MMA that beats Dominick Cruz. You can make some arguments that Randy Couture coming out of retirement, beating Tim Sylvia, was a big comeback story. GSP coming off of the loss from Matt Serra. That was a mental break in itself, one of the biggest upsets of all time. But the injuries Cruz came back from 3 ACL surgeries, a torn groin. His level of inactivity throughout the years dealing with these things, dealing with the issue that he may never actually fight again at such a high level of competition. That would have broken 99% of the people in the MMA game. But Dominick Cruz proved that he is one of, if not the mentally toughest fighters around. So I was definitely impressed with his win. I thought he won. I was happy to see him win. I was definitely rooting for him. But when I was being objective, breaking this fight down, I had picked Dillashaw. I thought the question marks around Cruz were too many, but he proved me wrong, and I was happy to see it happen. Moving on to the co-main event, which was Pettis versus Alvarez. This was a good fight, but Alvarez, who ended up winning the split decision, he kind of followed the blueprint that Clay Guida laid out, that RDA laid out, that this is how you beat Anthony Pettis. You don't let him just stay stationary in front of you. You get in his face, you're a grinder, you push him against the fence, you go for takedowns. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing sort of game plan to bring into a fight, but it's what worked. And I give it to Alvarez. He took a fight against the number 1 contender in the lightweight division and beat him. He did what he needed to do to get the W. Does this guarantee him a title shot? Does it put him in line? I don't know exactly. I don't think you could really say this. Like, the level of competition he faced definitely moves him up, but the way he won kind of takes away a little bit of his momentum towards that title shot. His name's in the mix. I think that's all you really can ask for after winning a fight against Pettis like that, is staying relevant. It was a good fight. At times, I would have liked to see Alvarez just like throw leather like he always does, bring out that Philadelphia fighter, and just, box. Like, he is a master on the feet. But going up against Pettis, that's his game too, right? His kicks, I thought his kicks and distance control would be too much. But it turned out that Alvarez had the right mentality, the right game plan to beat him. So it was a good win for Alvarez. Not the barn burner we all expected it to be, but it was entertaining nonetheless. So definitely a solid win from there. Moving on, Brown versus Mitrione. I had picked Brown originally to win this fight. Now, okay, let's just say it. The two eye pokes, those were ridiculous, okay? Mitrione got poked in the eye twice. The referee didn't even take a point. After the second eye poke, the ref allowed them to continue fighting, even though Mitrione clearly indicated to the ref that he'd been poked in an eye. All the replays showed that he was poked in the eye. And eventually the ref did step in, got the doctor involved, this and that. Mitrione toughed it out. He proved that he's a tough guy. He wasn't willing to take the easy way out and say, like, oh, okay, I got poked in the eye. My momentum's kind of gone. I'm emotionally invested now. I feel like I've been slighted. But he stuck through it and he fought, right? I mean, I think after the fight ended up coming out that he has a broken orbital bone from the punches that were landed and this and that from Brown's top game. But I don't think it was the win that Brown really wanted or really needed, to be honest. Like, he needed to win this fight without any sort of stigma attached to it. And poking Mitrione in the eye twice, I mean, that's John Jones-esque. I mean, that's John's favorite move, right? Like, he even put it on Twitter, like, Brown's using his favorite move. And it's not a good way to win. I mean, when you get poked in the eye twice and the ref doesn't take a point, it's almost worth it as a fighter just to say you can't see even if you can. All Mitrione's momentum, it was taken from him. He started playing in his own head. You can tell that he was worried about what's going on. He started thinking beyond what was actually happening in the fight because he was poked in the eye so much. He said at points he saw double. I just think the eye pokes really killed Mitrione's momentum. It sucks because this was his last fight in his UFC contract, and it kind of got ruined for him with the legal actions happening on Brown's part. I mean, everyone talks about the open-handed gloves where fingers are exposed, and I don't know how you fix it. I think some statistics came out that 4% of UFC fights, an eye poke happens. It's part of the game. It sucks, especially seeing it happen in this sort of fight where it was competitive up until the eye pokes. I feel for Mitrione. It's a decent win for Brown, but it's not what he wanted. It's not what he needed. It came off looking very shady for him. Like not that he did it on purpose. I mean, a lot of people train to control distance with open hands. But it definitely, it's an illegal move. It's something that illegally happened, and it did not benefit Mitrione. It hurt him in the overall fight. And I definitely think he got a little screwed there. I think the ref should have taken a point, should have put the fear into Brown's head, and not leave Mitrione being like, I've been poked in the eye twice, no points have been taken, I'm down 2 rounds. Like, I mean, you go into desperation mode. You start thinking the worst case scenario, and that's what happened. Is Mitrione started diving more. He started lunging with his strikes. So it was a rough fight to see happen. I feel for Mitrione. I hope he comes back. I hope the UFC, kind of acknowledges the fight and realizes that, like, this was not a fair fight for Mitrione. But then again, Brown got the W, so look at it how you will. I wasn't too impressed with Brown overall. I still think he's a shell of his former self when he came back against, like, Overeem and all that. But he got the W, like I said. So he won. Sucks for Mitrione. Just from, like, the circumstances of the fight. I'll be looking forward to seeing both these guys come back and see what they really got in them. For the last fight of the main card, we got Pearson versus Trinaldo. I picked Trinaldo to win here. I thought his stand-up game would be a little bit better, to be honest. He kind of seemed like he was pacing himself a lot more, that Pearson was the aggressor, and Trinaldo fell into that sort of counter-striker role. He was kind of avoiding Pearson for a lot. He'd circle away, explode into something, and try and catch Pearson coming in. I think that frustrated Pearson. I think Trinaldo definitely got a decent win here. over Pearson, who's a seasoned veteran. He's a bigger name, but I mean, it wasn't the most pleasing fight either. Outside of Dillashaw Cruz, the main card really kind of lacked some entertainment value. But Trinaldo got a good win here. His fighting style, I mean, Herb Dean all throughout the fight was asking for more action, more action, more action. Because at points it seemed like Trinaldo, in his reasoning to kind of prolong his gas tank, was not engaging. So it depends how the ref sees it. I mean, he could have really put it on Trinaldo, taking a point for inactivity. But I think he did enough to definitely win it. I'm looking forward to seeing Pearson come back. I think he's kind of plateaued a bit, maybe in his style. I don't really know what you could do at this point to fix that. He's not a ground specialist. He likes to keep it on the feet. But when you come up against a guy who's willing to let you take the lead like that, and it makes it a difficult fight. I mean, Trinaldo was landing cleaner shots. He was hitting them more because Pearson was trying to engage. So, I don't know. Take it as you will. I don't know. It just wasn't my fight, I guess. I don't like it when one guy's coming forward and the other guy's just trying to counter-strike him. I think counter-striking is definitely a big part of the stand-up aspect in MMA. But when someone overly plays around that to develop their game around that, I think it puts... I mean, you really have to take aggression into account. I think you should award the person trying to force the action more so than acknowledge the overall person, like the aspects of the guy who's not, right? I mean, aggression is a pointed system within MMA. Like every round, you do look at who's the aggressor. But here, I think that sort of lack of aggression on Trinaldo's part made for somewhat of a boring fight. It was like 1-2s back away, 1-2s back away. So it was an okay fight, but Trinaldo got the win, deservedly so, I think. But I would have liked to see a little bit more action out of him. The other two fights I'll talk about that happened on the prelims and early prelims was the Cote-Saunders fight and the Felder-Cruz fight. Now, for Cote-Saunders, I had picked Saunders to win. I thought his ground game would be too much for Cote, and I thought his Muay Thai game would be too much for him on the feet. But Cote proved me wrong, man. That first round attempt with an armbar looked deep. He utilized it to sweep and get on top of Saunders. Saunders' rubber guard game really never happened. Cote kept passing to half guard to nullify it. He landed some good ground and pound at the end of the first round. And then in the second round, when he put Saunders away, Saunders went for that tie clinch where I thought he'd be a lot stronger than Cote. He went for some knees, but Cote just overwhelmed him with uppercuts, dropped him, got him down to the ground, hammer-fisted away. Huge win for Cote. He's now 10-9 in the UFC, so he's finally got above that 500 mark. And, he's on a 3-fight win streak, so hopefully he gets a higher-ranked opponent, maybe top 10. Really test him there. I was glad to see it. Cote deserved it. He's a veteran. He looked good. Saunders kind of wilted under the pressure. I expected him to win, but, Cote with the upset, I'm always good with that. I love rooting for the Canadian. And Cote, he put it on him. Good for him. Good win. Definitely looking forward to seeing what's next for Cote. Felder-Cruz, this fight was a little bit harder to score, in my opinion. A lot of people were saying that Cruz won the first 2 rounds. And I didn't really see it that way. The first round, Felder went for a guillotine that was extremely tight. I mean, I valued that submission attempt to try and finish the fight highly because, like I said, you're trying to finish the fight. You're not looking to control from top position. So I think you have to value the sub attempt over actual octagon control because that was a tight guillotine. I mean, he jumped into guard. He pulled it as hard as he could. It was very, very close to being done. In the second round, Felder again went for a submission. He got reversed. I give it to him on the submission attempt. I thought he was winning the fight. Some people argue against that, and I understand their perspective. Then he pulled it off in the third. It was a good win for Felder. He fought two tough guys in his UFC debut and his follow-up fight with Pearson, his first fight being against Edson Barbosa. I mean, those guys are top-notch fighters. It was a good win for Felder. I know Cruzhank's on a 3-fight skid, I believe. I don't think this ends his UFC career. I definitely see him coming back. He's an entertaining fighter. 155 had a lot of matchups for him. So it was an entertaining fight. Good for Felder, good for the finish. That pretty much wraps up my interest for the UFC Fight Night Dillashaw versus Cruz card. Overall, I definitely give it like a B+ for the rating on the card itself. I think the main event lived up to the billing. I was very happy to see Cruz come back and win it. But as always, those are my thoughts. Hopefully, I shed some light on some things for you, some people. But if you get the chance, hit me up on Twitter, the No Subject. Check out my blog. As always, guys, keep it real. Glad seeing you.